instead of wasting food, they feed it to the homeless.
Exactly.
Right. So they hired you to do a video.
Live from Fox 12 Oregon, this is breaking news.
The NTSB is holding a news conference right now in DuPont, Washington, addressing questions regarding the cause of yesterday's deadly train derailment. Let's listen in.
Investigator in charge, Ted Turpin. As we reported last night, investigators from the NTSB arrived yesterday in DuPont, Washington, and began the on-scene investigation of the derailment of Amtrak train number 501. And that occurred yesterday on December 18th. Before I begin telling you about the investigative process to date, I first wanted to express our sincere condolences to everyone who was affected by this terrible accident. Our hearts go out to you and our thoughts are with you. Our Transportation Disaster Assistance Group has been tirelessly working to assist and inform the families and loved ones of those who have been affected. And they will continue the support of families throughout our investigation, both here at the scene and as we issue our investigative report. I'd like to explain a little bit more detail about the NTSB's party process, which we've had some questions about. And this is a process that has been in place for over 30 years. The NTSB offers party status to those companies, government agencies, and associations that have employees, activities, or equipment that are involved in any type of accident. And we offer party status to those organizations because they offer the technical expertise and the relevant information that we need for the development of the best possible factual record. In our organizational meeting, we established parties to the investigation today, and those parties are Amtrak, FRA, the Federal Railroad Administration, Sound Transit, the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen, SMART, and UTU, the union, Washington DOT. Also, Siemens and Talgo will be working with our teams to provide technical information about some of the equipment. And the NTSB has put together a multidisciplinary team to investigate every aspect of this accident. As I mentioned, Ted Turpin is our investigator in charge. He has over 40 years of experience in rail, and we've made progress in a number of areas already. So here is what our investigators are working on and have found out for the moment. First of all, local officials have made significant progress in reopening the route while preserving our evidence. They're in the process of moving the rail cars and the lead locomotive to Joint Base Lewis McChord, where our investigators will be able to better examine them closely. I was on scene very early this morning, and I observed the downward slight grade leading into the 30-mile-per-hour curve. The locomotive and the passenger cars were visibly piled up beyond that curve. There were witness marks, we call those witness marks, from the wheels on the ties where the wheels had departed the track. I mentioned last night that we had obtained the event data recorder from the rear locomotive. And today we've obtained the event data recorder from the lead locomotive. And we're in the process of obtaining the inward and outward facing cameras as well from the lead locomotive. And we'll be working with our state-of-the-art lab in Washington, D.C. to confirm preliminary information as well as to access the data to make sure that the data from the front recorder matches the data that's in the rear recorder. And in reviewing the event recorder, it looks like, in our preliminary analysis, that the emergency brake was automatically activated after when the accident was occurring, rather than being initiated by the engineer. There has been much discussion about how railway officials have prepared for this service. The multi-layered testing, we have found out, started in January of this year with Sound Transit and Amtrak. The crews have been operating for at least 2 weeks prior to the accident with non-revenue trains, as well as one VIP train. And we'll be evaluating closely and looking closely at that entire process. Our human performance, operations, and survival factors groups will begin interviews as soon as possible. We are working to interview crew members as soon as their medical status allows them to be able to be interviewed. We have confirmed that PTC was not installed on this line. Sound Transit had centralized traffic control, which is CTC, and this is a system that allows for dispatch direction over the train. CTC is not PTC, however. CTC cannot enforce speed restrictions on a train like PTC can. The locomotive was in the process of getting PTC, a system of PTC installed, but it was not yet functional. All of our teams continue working around the clock to gather information and the facts that will help us determine what happened in this accident and to prevent such accidents from occurring again. As the schedule going forward, our investigation is ongoing. We're working closely with the parties to gather principal evidence and key measurements to expedite our on-scene activities. We expect to be here between 7 to 10 days on scene, but we stay here as long as it takes. And although we've made good progress today, I do want to emphasize that we are still early in our investigation phase. Our objective is not just to find out what happened, but to find out exactly why it happened so we can prevent it from happening again. And let me reiterate, too, that we do not determine the probable cause while we are on scene. We also do not speculate about what may have caused this accident. And we'll be holding additional briefings as we have further progress to report. I would also like to ask for members of the public who have information pertinent to this investigation to contact us at eyewitnessreport@ntsb.gov. That's I as in EYE, witnessreport@ntsb.gov. And for the latest information on media briefings, I'd like to remind everyone to follow us on Twitter, which is NTSB_newsroom, and our website, of course, is ntsb.gov. And before I take a few questions, I would just once again like to thank all of the emergency responders and the community for assisting us in many ways, for saving lives, for preventing more injuries, and we're grateful for the reception that we've had here in this area. To ask a question, please raise your hand. Thank you. And when I identify you, please state your name and your affiliate. Yes, the...
Jamie Wilson, Fox 12 from Portland, Oregon. Can you talk about the PTC system and why that was not included on this rail line?
The question is about the PTC system and to give more information about it and why it was not installed in this rail line. The plans were to install a PTC system here. PTC is positive train control, and it's an overlay system that allows the technology to communicate and enforce things such as speed restrictions. So it would prevent train-to-train collisions. It would prevent incursions into work zones. It would prevent when there is a switch that is misaligned, and it would prevent overspeed accidents by either slowing down the train or actually stopping the train. The reason it's not installed, I should continue with that, is that there is a recommendation, a long-time recommendation from the NTSB. It is a mandate to install it. Unfortunately, the deadline was the end of 2015, but Congress extended that deadline to the train companies and allowed them to have until the end of 2018 to have a nationwide, to have every train system installed with PTC. And yes, the gentleman here.
Can you talk a little bit more about emergency brakes, what triggers an automatic engagement, and what sort of preliminary significance you would attach to the fact that the conductor did not do that?
Certainly. So what we found, as I mentioned, is that the brake was automatically activated rather than being initiated by the engineer. And that simply means that that's part of the, when there is an accident, the emergency brake system goes into place. So it was not something that the engineer actually initiated himself.
It happens during an accident.
Yes, it happens when there is an accident. Would you like to add anything to that? Yes.
Man, Pete Combs with Como News Radio in Seattle. Have you been able to determine, whether through interviews or any kind of a video that you might have been able to see, what was going on in the cab at the time of this accident and what that might or might not have had to do with what happened?
The question is, have we been able to determine with videos or any other information about what was going on inside the cab? And we were able to obtain the inward and outward facing cameras. They were unfortunately significantly damaged. You saw the terrible destruction of this accident. So we have sent it. We're sending it today back to our laboratories, which are state-of-the-art laboratories in D.C., and we'll be trying to extract that information to get the video information.
Well, now, has the engineer or any of the crew been interviewed, and if so, does that shed any light on that question?
The question is, has the engineer or anyone else in the crew been interviewed? And we're setting up interviews now as we speak, and we hope to interview them over the next couple of days. And gentleman in the yellow.
The witness marks you talked about on the rail, the aerial photos that we saw, I don't see any rail laying over onto its side, which is typical. I think last night we were talking about the 80-mile-per-hour speed. Tell me more about the witness marks that you saw, and is the rail still standing to appear in these drawings?
The question is the rail still standing as far as we can see, observe at the moment? And, what were the witness marks that we observed? As far as we could see, obviously there's still a lot of wreckage that needs to be removed, but at the curve, the rail appears to be intact. The witness marks are there, showing where it derailed. Yes.
Hi, Steve Futterman from CBS News. There have been some reports suggesting there was someone with the engineer at the time of the accident. Can you confirm that there was someone with him?
The question is, there have been reports that there was someone with the engineer, and could we confirm that? And yes, there were two people in the cab, the engineer and a conductor who was getting experience and familiarizing himself with the territory. The actual conductor, as there is one on every train, was in the actual passenger section at the time of the accident.
And with this, do you look into the possibility of someone being distracted because of this?
The question is, do we look at the possibility of someone being distracted? And absolutely, distraction is one of our most wanted list priorities at the NTSB. It's protocol for us to look at all of the cell phone records of all the crew members whenever there's an accident of this type. And of course, we hope when we interview the crew members, they'll be able to give us more information. Yes.
Robert Taylor with ABC Network News. With regards to the engineer, how much training did he have prior to this incident as far in general and as far as on this track? And have you ever actually driven this train during the same time frame that he did that morning?
The question is about the engineer, about his experience, and whether he had been on this track, driven on this track before. And we always look at all of the training and the records of every crew member when there's been an accident, so we're in the process of doing that. As I mentioned previously, this train had been on runs, non-revenue runs, so there were no paying customers with at least some of this crew in the 2 weeks prior.
Just to follow up, we don't know if this specific engineer had driven this track before.
Let me ask Mr. Turpin. Shall I turn that over? It's more
the question was, do we know if the engineer was on this track? Basically, under Amtrak policy, he couldn't operate the train unless he was qualified and familiar with this territory. So the answer would be yes. Within the previous 2 weeks, he had been qualified to operate on the territory.
Do you know how many times you would have to make that?
No, that's some of the process we are looking at is how they qualified people, how much time they did, what time of day, all these questions that you have. We're researching that now. So, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Turpin. And as you can see, we're constantly getting new information, so we like to give you the latest. Yes, the gentleman in the back.
So just to follow up, have you
learned anything more about why the train was traveling at such a high rate of speed in that particular section? Do you know anything more about that today versus what you did yesterday? And then just to follow up on what someone else has said, I'm still unclear. Have you spoken at all to the engineer in question?
So the question is, have we spoken at all to the engineer, and do we know why the speed was 80 miles per hour, as was shown on the vet data recorder? We are in the process of setting up an interview. As you may know, all of the crew was hospitalized, so as soon as they're able, we hope to get more information from them, but of course we want to be respectful of their injuries. The question about speed, that's a difficult one to answer because we need to look at the whole speed profile of the territory about when the train accelerated to that speed, if it decelerated. We have to look at the entire territory to see, what was happening in the moments before the accident. And we hope the event data recorders will help us with that, as well as interviews with the crew, and we'll have to wait for them to be able, medically, to be able to do that. Yes, the gentleman there.
Tom Boxey with Public Radio Bureau. Is there any indication there was last-minute maintenance done on this train before its departure?
The question is, was there any last-minute maintenance done? And not that I'm aware of. And we will, of course, we always look at all of the maintenance records, and if anything comes to light, we'll certainly report that. The gentleman in the far back.
John Humber with Q13. Based on the training runs that happened and those non-revenue runs, is there any evidence that this speed was something that was allowed, possible, or had been done before at that area?
We so the question is, I should repeat that, is there, do we have any evidence, or do we know about whether in the non-revenue runs in the weeks before, whether there, if that kind of speed is allowable in that area? And, that's part of our investigation. So we have to look carefully at that. It's, it's not so simple as just targeting one speed. We have to look to see what the process of the whole train. We look at it from the beginning of the run all the way to the end of the run, and to see, as the crew makes changes, as the engineer makes decisions, how that influenced the activity. Yes, the woman there.
Can you clarify again who was in the cab at the time of the crash and what the engineer was doing at that time?
The question is, can we clarify again who was in the cab and what they were doing? The two people who were in the cab, as far as we know, are the engineer and a conductor who was familiarizing himself with the territory, which means that's part of a job of a conductor, is to know the territory, familiarize him or herself with the territory. There was a conductor on the train who was performing the duties of a conductor, and he was in the passenger section. And that's another duty of a conductor, is not just to be aware of the familiarity with the territory, but also, of course, conduct himself with or herself with all of the passengers. As far as exactly what they're doing, we will be talking with them and finding that out.
One more question.
Yes, the woman in the back, please.
There was some confusion about the 911 call, the initial 911 call. Who made that? Do you know if it was the engineer or one of the conductors who made that first 911 call?
The question is, who made that first 911 call? And I'm unclear with that. Do you?
We have that data yet.
And unfortunately, we don't have that data yet, but if we get it in the next few days, we'll certainly let you know. Thank you very much.
All right, live coverage there. The NTSB addressing some questions regarding this train derailment and what exactly occurred. A lot of focus right now on who was inside that cabin alongside the conductor when the crash occurred. Also, a lot of concern about the rate of speed that the train was traveling at as it approached that turn right there over Interstate 5. As you can see right now, the work continues. This is a live look. cranes being used to remove those rail cars, move them onto flatbed trucks, onto I-5, so they can help in the process of clearing that roadway. If you haven't heard, I-5 southbound expected to remain closed through this evening, probably through tomorrow morning as well. A major operation there just to clear the roadway. Obviously, a lot of questions being asked, not that many answers at this point. We, of course, are on top of it. We have a crew there in DuPont and crews covering the story from many different angles. Stay with Fox 12 and KPTV.com for the very latest. We will have a complete wrap-up on the 5 o'clock news, and, of course, you can always go to KPTV.com.
Yes. Okay. Did she tell you that the tire came off?
No.